welcome to the follow-up video on turning a half-twist bowl. In the initial video, we did the on the lathe turning using on-center and off-center techniques with this ash to create a bowl with a twisted top and a natural edge. Now let's take a look at how we can take a natural edge bowl like this and do the finishing cuts to give it a little more shape where the inside mimics the outside triangular shape. Or if we want to do the final finishing just to have an organic shape, you can see these petals on the finished top of this walnut half-twist bowl. These were made using a technique that we'll talk about in this how-to video on how to cut and carve these shapes to give you kind of an organic petal shape. So let's get started. First we'll talk about finishing the natural edge bowl, and then we'll talk about carving petals in an organic shape on a walnut bowl or anything similar.
First thing we're going to try and tackle is the natural edge bowl. This one's turned out of ash, and this is the one that the demo was done on. And the end is the natural edge, but if you look closely at it, it's a circular opening, but I've got a triangular outer edge. So to make it look more appropriate, we're going to trim some of the interfaces here to make them more closely match the triangular outer shape. You can see where I've got this area just sketched in with a pencil, and if I rotate that around, this area that I've got cross-hatch in pencil, I'm going to remove with some of my shaping tools. Similarly, I'll do that at each of the three corners here. So I've got the tools that I use to get started. These are all microplane tools. You might recognize these from your wife's cheese grater. The same company makes wood carving tools and cheese graters. I'm going to start off with a circular edged microplane tool, and these teeth are very sharp, don't need sharpening, but if you notice the direction right now, it's made for a push cut, which with this uphill slope I'd be lifting the grain. I don't want to do that, so these blades can be switched. So I'm going to take that out, put it back in the grooves, pop it back in, and now I've got it set to work on the pull.
Here again are some of the carving tools: the cut-saws, various shape files, and the microplane carving tools.
Shaping away here. This is the fine cut microplane. I'm getting it down to that edge that I wanted it to be at. Come back in with the rounded edge on the shaping file. And then maybe it's time to come in with some sandpaper. I've got some 120 grit on the edge of a piece of PVC just to make a nice rounded sanding stick. And I start off with 120, work my way up to 220 before I put an oil finish, and then maybe I'll come back with a finer grit after I put the first coat of the oil finish, just to smooth the surface. So there we have it. That's the natural edge bowl, with the opening starting to be triangular, and we're getting the final shape before we go on. So that's the inner surface. I've got one more I haven't done, but I'm going to stop here and just talk a little bit about the outer surface. This is the as-cut edge here, and if I rotate a little bit, you can see some of the grooves here from the tool. This is one I've sanded some. This side you might get to see a little bit of the grooves, and sometimes it's just the lighting that really makes a difference. But this is really not as smooth as I would like it. So again, through a combination of tools, I can come in and use my curved shaping tool. Again, I've got it set up for the pull, and try and get that edge. These nice crisp edges are what you want to retain. You put so much work into cutting those with your tools. Come back in with the shaping tool. little bit of sanding here. I'm starting off with 120 grit. And that's the process. I usually go up to 220 before I put a finish on this. And my preferred finish is Watco oil. It's a Danish oil. And then I just buff it on a wheel buffing system. This surface I've sanded quite a bit. It's getting close, but you can see the edge here still is going to need a little work.
We've done the natural edge bowl. Now let's look at a different treatment to give it kind of an organic look, like the walnut bowl shown here.
Case that we talked about in the intro was how do we shape the top of the half twist bowl if we don't have a natural edge and we want to give it a nice spiral, almost organic shape. You can see I've started to work on these two sides, but let me show you how I got there. I sketched in the lines of the section I want to cut out. Well, I've got just a slight cut that I need to make with the coping saw, and the blade I've got it set to cut on the pull down. And then when I get in close, I won't be able to get that final corner cut with this saw. So instead, I've got a blade on my X-Acto handle that'll let me get in there and do that final cut. So let's get started on the cut. I like to leave this just on the lathe. It makes it easier to work with. So again, it's set to cut on the pull. I'm cutting that other line, getting fairly close with my coping saw, but not cutting that final corner because I'm going to come in with that X-Acto blade and finish the cut. So I've rotated it here. I'm just cutting into the corner with a straight cut so that I don't make a sharp line that I'd have to cut out later. So the wood kind of helped out. Slight crack, a piece of wood. And there we have the basic cut. So now I've made that basic cut, and you can see I've got three sort of organic petals made here. But there's a lot of shaping that has to be done. I need to shape the inside to make that blend more nicely, and I need to shape the groove and point that groove kind of down in the direction like you see I've done here. So if you remember those microplane tools, here's one that's set up to cut on the pull and has a nice V groove. I'm going to just start pulling that one. Then you can come in with the flat edge microplane and start to shape the outer edges and blend it in a little bit. And you've got your other various tools. The cut saw is a little rough maybe, so come in with your shaping file and then maybe end up with some sandpaper. I'm starting here with 120 grit. Finish up. I usually take it to about 220 before I put an oil finish on it. So we keep that going, and we can see we get this nice spiral end shape with the half twist bowl with the petals that start to give it somewhat of an organic shape. Well, hopefully that gives you a better idea of how to do the final finishing on these twisted half twist bowls. So we can come up with a natural edge bowl with a good twist on the top and a circular bottom, or using the techniques with the carving tools like the microplane and the cut saw, come up with a nice twisted shape on the top where we carve out what look like petals to mimic the nice twisted shape. Again, it takes a little bit of carving and sanding, but I think you'll be happy with the results. Thanks for listening.